Everybody's screaming, everyone's crying. So what's the occasion? Well, Congresswoman Omar got voted off the Foreign Affairs Committee.
The question is on adoption of the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those in favor say no. No. It's the opinion of the chair that the ayes have it and the resolution is agreed to. And without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Does that remind you of anything?
As the gavel struck and the tally finalized, the chamber erupted, half in cheers, half in outrage. The removal of Congresswoman Ilhan Omar from the House Foreign Affairs Committee wasn't just a political maneuver, it was a statement. The echoes of that vote rippled far beyond the chamber walls, igniting debates on accountability, partisanship, and the boundaries of dissent. For her supporters, the move felt like a punishment rooted in politics, not principle, a silencing of a voice that had often challenged the establishment. For her critics, it was long overdue, a reckoning for statements they deemed unbecoming of someone representing U.S. interests abroad. Omar, visibly emotional but unbroken, stood her ground. Her defiance in that moment captured the essence of a politician who has never shied away from controversy. Around her, the room buzzed with divided energy, triumph on one side, disbelief on the other. This wasn't just the removal of a member from a committee. It was a reminder of the growing rift in American politics, where every vote feels like a verdict, and every decision becomes a reflection of a deeper cultural battle.
McCarthy yanked Omar off Foreign Affairs to pay back Pelosi for yanking his people off committees. He didn't want to do it, doesn't think it's right, but he had to do it. You can't let Democrats boot your boys off committees and turn the other cheek. What's good for the goose?
Speaker Kevin McCarthy addressed the chamber with a tone of finality, insisting that the decision wasn't personal. It was political balance being restored. Many insiders claimed he hesitated at first, but the precedent set by former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who had previously removed several Republicans from major committees, left him feeling he had little room to maneuver. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, McCarthy remarked, his words carrying both defiance and calculation. It was a clear signal that Congress had entered a new era of payback politics. The message was unmistakable. Republicans were done playing defense. This move wasn't about fairness or reform. It was about power and principle colliding. McCarthy's stance reflected a shift on Capitol Hill, where cooperation has taken a backseat to confrontation, and every action now echoes with the weight of past grievances.
Consistency, there is nothing consistent with the Republican Party's continued attack except for the racism and incitement of violence against women of color in this body. I had a member of the Republican caucus threaten my life, and you all and the Republican caucus rewarded him with one of the most prestigious committee assignments in this Congress. This is about targeting women of color in the United States of America. Don't tell me, because I didn't get a single apology.
Time has expired.
My life was threatened. Thank you.
The response was immediate and explosive. Democrats erupted in outrage, denouncing the vote as both racist and Islamophobic. To them, it wasn't about committee assignments. It was about identity and principle. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley, and other members of the squad rushed to Omar's defense, arguing that she was being targeted not for her actions, but for who she is, a black Muslim woman unafraid to challenge U.S. foreign policy. Their speeches turned the chamber into a battleground of emotion. Voices rose, tears were visible, and the divide in Washington was laid bare. What should have been a procedural vote became something far more revealing, a reflection of how personal, passionate, and fractured American politics has become.
Republicans are waging a blatantly Islamophobic and racist attack on Congresswoman Omar. And I've said it before, I will say it again. The white supremacy happening is unbelievable. This is despicable. This is just a bunch of racist gaslighting.
Could it be the way that
Gentlemen's time is expired.
Could it be how religious practices? This clearly isn't about what Ilhan Omar said as much as who she is. Being a smart, outspoken black woman of a Muslim faith is apparently the issue.
The GOP is now doing what it is best at.
Ilhan Omar then rose to speak, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. The chamber, buzzing with tension moments earlier, fell into a heavy silence. Her voice carried both pain and power as she reminded the room and the nation of her journey. A refugee who fled war, a Muslim woman who found a home in America, and an immigrant who turned that home into a platform for change. "I came to this country seeking safety, not hatred," she said, her tone steady but emotional. Then came the question that pierced through the noise. "Is anyone surprised that I am being targeted?" It wasn't just a defense, it was a declaration. Omar refused to be portrayed as a victim. Her words cut through the politics, transforming the moment from a procedural punishment into a statement of resilience. In that instant, even her fiercest critics couldn't deny it. She stood defiant, unbroken, and unapologetically herself.
Beautiful Muslim woman. They turn Congress into a place of fear-mongering hate. It is so painful to watch who you all are, really.
The gentlewoman's time has
Congresswoman Omar
expired.
will not be silenced.
The gentlewoman's time
To
has expired.
Congresswoman Omar, I am
Gentlewoman's
so
time
sorry,
has
sis,
expired.
that our country is failing you today through this chamber. You belong
The
in that
gentlewoman is no
committee.
longer.
Well, I am Muslim.
Omar supporters called her removal a betrayal of American ideals, a moment where the very values of inclusion and representation seemed to collapse under political pressure. To them, this wasn't just about one congresswoman losing a seat. It was about millions who saw themselves in her, refugees, immigrants, Muslims, and women of color, watching a symbol of their own journey be pushed aside. They said the chamber hadn't just failed Ilhan Omar, it had failed the promise of America itself, but conservatives pushed back hard. To them, the move wasn't about race or religion, it was about responsibility. They argued that anyone shaping U.S. foreign policy should be held to the highest standard, that criticism of the nation's allies had consequences, and that identity couldn't shield a member of Congress from accountability. Two sides, one decision, and two completely different definitions of patriotism. Each camp convinced it was defending the Real America, even as the divide between them grew wider than ever.
I am an immigrant, and interestingly, from Africa. Is anyone surprised that I am being targeted? Is anyone surprised that I am somehow deemed unworthy to speak about American foreign policy? Or that they see me as a powerful voice that needs to be silenced?
Omar is not just a congresswoman. She tells us she is a global citizen, and people around the world celebrate her accomplishments.
The chamber erupted. Gasps, shouts, and murmurs filled the air as the Republicans' words cut deep. Ungrateful. It wasn't just an accusation. It was a wound reopened in front of the entire nation. He argued that America had given Ilhan Omar everything: safety from war, a home, an education, and even a seat in Congress. Yet, in his view, she repaid it with criticism instead of gratitude. His remarks split the room in an instant. On one side, applause thundered from Republicans who saw his statement as a defense of American pride. On the other, Democrats rose to their feet in fury, calling it demeaning and xenophobic. The moment captured something raw: the clash between two visions of patriotism, one that equates love of country with unquestioned loyalty, and another that sees dissent as the truest form of devotion. For millions watching, it felt like a line had been crossed. The debate was no longer about committee assignments or foreign policy. It was about who gets to belong, who gets to speak, and what it means to be American.
We don't know what those accomplishments are, but if you listen closely, the world is clapping.
My leadership and voice will not be diminished if I am not on this committee for one term. My voice will get louder and stronger, and my leadership will be celebrated around the world as if...
Cable news lit up within minutes. Headlines screamed across every network: Omar removed, Congress erupts, America divided again. On social media, hashtags exploded as supporters and critics clashed in real time. Every clip, every soundbite became fuel for a wider cultural fire. To the left, pundits called it proof of systemic bias, a chilling sign that voices of color were being pushed out of power under the guise of accountability. To the right, It was poetic justice, a long-awaited reckoning for comments they said crossed the line. But for millions of Americans in between, it was something else entirely: fatigue. Another chapter in the endless cycle of outrage, where every vote becomes a war and every disagreement becomes personal. While Washington traded accusations of racism and revenge, everyday citizens saw a government more focused on fighting itself than fixing problems that actually matter. What should have been a single procedural vote had morphed into a national referendum on freedom, faith, and belonging. It wasn't just about Ilhan Omar anymore. It was about America, still struggling to define what unity truly means in a nation built on division.
Town where we have a lot of people who are refugees who have come, some from Somalia, some from Bosnia. I've never heard one of them say that America's a terrible place or be unappreciative of our country. Most of them are thankful. I've met people who've come here from behind the Iron Curtain that got away from communism. They're some of the best Americans we have because they really appreciate how great our country is, and then they're here.
When Allison Reacts dropped his commentary, the online conversation exploded. He framed the cheering crowd not as malicious, but as ordinary citizens expressing exasperation, a public fed up with perceived double standards in politics. His take resonated with millions who feel alienated by the constant pressures of political correctness. "This isn't about hate," he said. "It's about frustration." The statement acted like a spark to tinder. Social media erupted, some praising his candor, others condemning what they saw as oversimplification or bias. Hashtags trended, clips circulated, and debates raged in comment sections, forums, and live streams that Allison's video didn't just comment on an event. It amplified the conversation, turning a single congressional vote into a nationwide debate about frustration, fairness, and the boundaries of expression in modern America.
Representative Omar say, "Oh, America's a terrible place. I thought there'd be justice, and there's no justice here." It's like, well, she came here and we fed her, we clothed her, she got welfare, she got school, she got health care, and then lo and behold, she has the honor of actually winning a seat in Congress, and she says we're a terrible country. I think that's about as ungrateful as you can get.
In his impassioned monologue, Allison Reacts didn't mince words. He quoted Representative Omar, highlighting her criticism of America despite the opportunities she had been given: food, clothing, welfare, education, healthcare, and eventually a seat in Congress. Allison framed her remarks as ingratitude, arguing that Americans were fed up with such sentiments that he emphasized that this wasn't about race, but about values and patriotism. To him, the moment symbolized ordinary citizens reclaiming their identity, their Congress, and their pride. "When did loving your country become offensive?" he asked, underscoring his view that leaders should prioritize America and stop apologizing for its greatness. That Allison's commentary positioned the event as more than political theater. It was, in his telling, a cultural statement, sparking debate on what it means to be patriotic in modern America.
And so while I'm not saying we forcibly send her anywhere, I'm willing to contribute to buy her a ticket to go visit Somalia. And I think she could look and maybe learn a little bit about the disaster that is Somalia, that has no capitalism, has no God-given rights guaranteed in a constitution, and has about 7 different tribes that have been fighting each other for the last 40 years. And then maybe after she's visited Somalia for a while, she might...
The removal of Ilhan Omar from a Foreign Affairs Committee became far more than a procedural vote. It evolved into a national reckoning over identity, values, and the limits of free speech. Supporters viewed her as a symbol of resilience, representing immigrants, women, and people of color who refused to be silenced. They rallied in protests on college campuses and across social media, framing her removal as a warning that dissent could be punished. Critics, on the other hand, portrayed the decision as a matter of accountability and national interest, arguing that Omar's repeated controversial remarks made her unfit to shape U.S. foreign policy. Conservatives celebrated the move as a triumph of principle over partisanship, emphasizing the need for leaders to uphold shared values. Media coverage amplified the polarization. News outlets, pundits, and social platforms turned her removal into a cultural flashpoint, fueling debates that went well beyond Congress. Hashtags trended, TikTok creators and podcasters weighed in, and millions of Americans voiced opinions, some defending Omar, others condemning her, transforming the event into a digital battleground of ideas and emotions. Behind the scenes, lawmakers wrestled with both the political consequences and the precedent the vote set. Omar herself remained defiant, calling the decision a stain on American democracy and vowing to continue advocating for underrepresented communities, that in the end, Omar's removal was not just about a committee seat. It became a mirror of modern America, deeply divided along lines of ideology, identity, and interpretation of patriotism, yet united by the emotional intensity of the debate. Supporters saw injustice, opponents saw accountability. Yet every American, whether cheering or condemning, felt the weight of this historic moment, which will resonate long beyond that single vote.